Looks like we are live, man.
Let me check my
Awesome.
pulse. Yep.
Right on. Well, Scott, thank you again for joining me. It's the first time we've had the opportunity to chat, and so just spent just a couple of minutes just doing some pleasantries, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. I really love following you appear frequently in my notes feed. And I love your notes, really thoughtful and insightful and frequently inspiring. So I'm looking forward to getting to know each other a little bit better and seeing what kind of ruckus we can make here doing Substack Live.
Awesome. Yeah, I think you did a live with David McElroy
Mhm.
a couple of months ago. I think I might have been on vacation, and that popped up, and I listened in for a few minutes, and I was very intrigued because there's a lot of overlap between um, your work and mine, and some of the language that you use. And then after you got off the call, you reached out to me and said that David sort of recommended that we get together, and so I'm I've been following along ever since, and I'm glad that we got the opportunity to get together here, man. So can you want to share? Would you mind sharing a little bit just about your Substack journey?
Sure. Um, yeah, so I am the publisher of Creative on Purpose, which is a Substack that is dedicated to where the art of living meets work that matters. Uh, some of that language comes from my 7-year association with Seth Godin. I was a, a participant in the Alt MBA and the very first Akimbo workshop, which was called the Marketing Seminar. And then I was invited to become a coach in those programs and eventually a head coach in the Akimbo programs. And that journey, that 7-year association with Seth Godin helped me transition from a 7-year uh, successful career as a performing guitarist and guitar teacher to what I'm doing now, which is just being in the corner of anyone that wants to get a little bit clear about and closer to what they want in the next chapter of their lives. And so Creative on Purpose explores all things related to the art of living, all things related to work that matters. We have lots of frameworks for helping people get clear about and closer to building a business on their terms that funds and fits the life that they actually want. And we also just really in the community just got off a call where we're jamming on the difference between things that are complicated and things that are complex and trying to
Hmm.
distinguish the difference between situations and problems and how when we don't pay attention to the difference we can get stuck or end up spinning our wheels and getting nowhere even though we feel like we're working hard. So that's that's my long-winded non-answer to your very direct question.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you, you have really opened my eyes, my mind to something that I was stuck on that I didn't realize I was stuck on. Just sort of paralyzed with this whole idea of figuring out how to create you know, a lead magnet and a funnel and a landing page, and all of that just seemed overwhelming.
Mm,
Um, and so, really, getting to know your work and listening to your methodology has really changed my approach and the way I'm sort of looking at it. So I want to thank you for that, because it's clarifying, and it takes a lot of the pressure that I was feeling off, to try to become a marketer or an advertiser, or something that's really outside of my wheelhouse and my just overall comfort level in general. So I appreciate that very much. I've heard you say a couple of times that you went through that phase of doing that
mhm,
yourself and burned yourself out pretty quickly.
mhm.
Um, where was that in the journey there? Was that before you found Seth, or after, during?
No, it was definitely after when I started in the Alt MBA in August of 2016. I thought I wanted to take my online teaching, uh, you know, or take a very successful brick and mortar teaching studio and bring it online. And by the time I finished the 4-week program with Seth, I didn't even really necessarily want to be a professional guitarist or teacher anymore. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I just knew that life was calling me to do something different. And like a lot of folks, I figured it out by just doing a lot of talking out loud in public and having conversations like this. I think conversation is the fastest way to connect with the right people and to try to get clarity around your ideas. And so it took it took me a long time. It took me almost 7 years before I actually landed on kind of a brand and an offer and all the things that digital marketers love to talk about. And then once I did, I definitely fell under the spell of all the online gurus and digital marketers that talk about ideal customer avatars and picking your niche and creating power offers and funnels and content strategies and schedules and all that sort of thing. And because I am, I'm not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but I'm not too dim, and I work hard, and I was able to master a lot of the digital marketing theatrics and gymnastics. And through spending a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of effort, created a business that I didn't really like that much, working with people that I didn't really care about that much. But, because it was all powered by digital marketing BS, it kept things going. But just kind of what you were alluding to, like most of us that are purpose-driven people that want to make a difference in the world and just want to make enough today to do it again tomorrow, most of us don't have aspirations to be expert digital marketers.
Yeah.
But once we kind of figure out what it is that we have to offer and who we want to serve, it feels like that's what we have to do in order to connect the offer with the audience. And in the process of doing that, I feel like I just completely lost my way in terms of what I was really wanting to accomplish and what I really found fulfilling and meaningful in terms of the work I was doing and the kind of people that I like to do that work with and for. So I ended up with a business that was consistently earning me the coveted $10,000 a month after month, but I was spending 80 to 90% of my time on digital marketing BS that felt like it was literally sucking the soul out of my body, doing work I didn't like with people I didn't care about. And within somewhere in that 9 to 12 month mark, I literally just burnt out and blew that business up out of desperation to get away from it. And the recovery for me was building myself from the ground up again, and just with the intention that I'm not going to play any of the digital marketing games. I'm not going to make an ideal customer avatar. I'm not going to try to find a niche. I'm not going to create a power offer or create an online funnel. I'm literally just going to have conversations with people. I see Nick Peterson just joined. He's instrumental in helping me build the business that I have now. One of his proteges is a woman I worked with, Laurel Portier, who is kind of the one of the best online marketing strategists when it comes to online ethical marketing. But one of the things that Nick says is that conversations is the fastest path to cash. I don't necessarily chase money as an end in and of itself. I find it to be like a natural side effect of doing meaningful work with the right people. But conversations have been a big part of it. And, which is why I was so eager to talk to you. Like, this is just how you and I are going to be able to get clear about and closer to what we want and get better at talking about what we do, but also better at doing what we do. And, just to come full circle to the full antidote to the digital marketing approach is, rather than try to use pressure and force to jam random strangers that you don't know and don't really care about through a process. I mean, who wants to be processed? But, we don't like to be processed. We don't like it when digital marketing is being, implemented against us. Why do we decide that that's what we have to do in order to work with people? What if instead of all that force and pressure and behaving in a way that you would never want to be or become, what if you just became the best in the world at doing what you can do in the way only you can do it, and allow that preeminence to create gravity that naturally draws more of the right people to learn about you and to want to increase their level of proximity and access, so that through the process of helping them get clear about what they want and defining a path that will get them there, they'll naturally raise their hands to work with you, because you've already helped them get clear about what they really want. You help them get clear about where they're starting from and what they're starting with. You've shown them the path, it's right there, and they already possess everything they need. Why would they not hire you or buy your
Yeah.
thing if it helps them close the gap with greater ease and velocity? And that whole approach, which is really pretty simple, my whole approach to marketing is, show up as you are with what you have, do your thing with whoever's around, and your people will find you. And
Mm.
that's literally how the business that I have now was built. And I've earned my annual revenue number uh, within the first 6 months of the year, 3 years in a row. And I get to spend 9 hours a day with my grandkids. I get to
That's
spend two
awesome.
hours a day doing work that I love. So, again, long-winded answer
Good
to a
for
short
you.
question. Yeah.
No, that's great stuff. I mean, and really what you're describing, I think, for me, how it hits me is, the whole marketing funnel and the part that you were doing that you really burn out from, that's the performance side of it, right? So you're
Mm,
performing this version of yourself that you think you need to be, right, in order to draw people in. And now you're just showing up authentically as you. And yeah, like you said, you'll repel the ones that shouldn't be there and you'll attract the ones that should. And
yeah.
that's a good foundation to build your life on right there.
Well, I think that what you just shared is really brilliant. Needs to be highlighted is, polarization has a bad rep right now because we live in a polarized world where people are intentionally and provocatively and performatively polarizing. But there is a generous side of polarization. Like,
Mm.
when you show up as you are with what you have and do what you can with and for the people that you care about, you are also at the same time letting other people that are not your people or that you don't have something to offer know that they need to move along and find what they need, or maybe you can even help them find their
Yeah.
way to something that can help them. And that there's generosity in that. There's Because you're saving yourself time and heartache, and you're saving them time and possibly money and effort and heartache as well.
Yeah.
um,
Right. And it's
so
not that you don't have something to offer necessarily, but there's just something about your way, your process, your methods, your personality, right? That doesn't fit. And yeah, helping them find a good place to land if you can. Yeah, that is. I love everything you just said there, man. It's hard though, I think uh, for me, my whole life has been a story of performances that I didn't even know I was performing. You know what I mean? And slowly but surely you begin to wake up to that and realize there's a better way, you know. That's the other piece of the marketing funnel that just drives me bonkers is there's no single path.
mhm.
And for somebody to claim that their product is the product is there's no single product. There's an infinite way of getting where we all are trying to go. um, and maybe someone's path is totally different and they're not trying to get where you're going, right, or want to lead them. So yeah, all that is great stuff. um, you Another thing I think I learned about you was that you got introduced to a couple of very important topics at a very early age in your life. I think you mentioned seventh grade, right?
Mhm.
Stoicism and some ancient teachings, right? That's how did that come about?
uh, this I really appreciate the question. In my as a young person, I was born in a military hospital, and after my dad got out, he went to work for AT&T back in the good old days when it was a full blown monopoly, and we
Mm.
moved around a lot, and so I was I never spent more than 2 years in any given school for all of elementary school. And by the time I landed in junior high school, I was a pretty screwed up kid. It's a hard time in a young person's life to try to find, belonging and identity in a brand new environment. And so I became a little bit of a juvenile delinquent, and it was pretty clear to my parents that I would either end up dead or in juvie before I became a teenager. And they just so happened that the person across the street was the headmaster of this little private school, and they went across the street and said, "Is there anything you can do to help us and our kid?" And uh, he found a scholarship that let me go to this really amazing school where in seventh and eighth grade, I was one of 7 kids that had 2 really fantastic teachers that completely turned my life around, that whole experience. And one of them introduced me to Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, and the other introduced me to the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching. And those 3 books became instrumental in just helping me navigate all of my adolescence, the rest of my high school and college years, my early career as a teacher, my marriage, becoming a father, and having a 30-year music career as well. Um, the thing about ancient wisdom is that the stuff that we still pay attention to is completely time tested, and a lot of it now is scientifically vetted. Stoicism is now the foundation of cognitive behavioral therapy and logos therapy and rational emotive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of positive psychology that they all have roots in Stoic philosophy that have now been kind of proven through neuroscience and the scientific method. So I found those things really early on, and they completely informed and inspired a turnaround in my life at an early age, and they just continued to do that as I continue to navigate my way through, this phase of my life as a grandpa and a corner man, corner person, coach, etc.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'll tell you, man, the similarities just keep stacking up here. So my dad worked for AT&T
Oh wow.
for right around 20, 21 years, and then he got caught up in the first downsizing,
Hmm.
which was, I think I was in maybe a freshman, sophomore in high school, and so that was terrifying, to see all of that sort of come together. Um, and yeah, in 7th grade, I can relate. I had lost my way pretty significantly in the 7th grade. My parents were divorced, so I actually got kicked out of my mom's house and sent to live with my dad
Wow.
after I flunked 7th grade, my first go around, which is a whole other story that we don't have time for. But yeah, I wish I could have had someone step in and introduce me to those types of things. But it was a big shift, moving schools and transitioning and trying to find my way there. So yeah, very interesting. Um, another one of the things that you say quite often um, that really got me is it's word for word what I use, and I think it's a pretty common term. But this whole idea of closing the gap,
Hmm.
what does that mean to you? I know you use it. I've heard you use it a few different ways, but yeah, where'd that come from for you, and what does that mean, if you don't mind?
Yeah. Well, again, I'll tip my hat to Nick Peterson, who's some of his frameworks and principles have helped inform this. A lot of what I learned from Seth Godin, and a lot of what I've learned over the years from Stoic philosophy and the Bhagavad Gita and the Tao Te Ching. Um, the gap is a way of talking about a solvable problem, and the words solvable problem are kind of redundant. Like, a problem has a solution. By definition, every problem is solvable. The problem is that most of the time, what we are calling problems are situations, and
Mm,
situations are not easy to solve. They don't have a clearly defined outcome or or path to resolution. And because we conflate problems and situations, oftentimes the things that we call solvable problems are not. And we spend endless cycles. And this is part of the reason, some of the reason has to do with our default human programming and conditioning. But we spend a lot of time looking out the window for solutions, like, oh, that guru must have the solution, or that digital marketer must have the software or the app or the framework, or this religion or this philosophy has all the answers that I need. The problem, I wrote about this recently in my book Intrepid, that just released a couple months ago, or I guess about a month ago. The answer almost never lies out the window. It almost always lies in the mirror, because we are all born sufficient and whole, possessing everything we need to succeed in anything that we want to succeed in life. You and I experience this with our grandchildren. We get to revisit this, that, like, if you think about what it requires, the physics and the psychology that it takes to learn how to walk and talk and read and write a bicycle, it looks impossible, and yet every able-bodied child is able to accomplish these things in a very short period of time with almost no instruction. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't sit my grandkids in front of a YouTube video to learn how to read or write or talk or anything else. So when we're talking about the gap, oftentimes there's the gap between, our current state and the experience we want to be experiencing, between where we are and where we want to be. The gap is usually, in some way, shape, or form, that solvable problem. Like, if we can get clear about what we're actually trying to accomplish, or the problem that we're actually trying to solve, and we can get clear enough about where we're starting and what we're starting with, we will define the gap. And the fastest way to start closing the gap is stop doing all the stupid shit that you're doing that you don't have to do and shouldn't be doing anyways. Like, stop spending all your time looking for answers in the YouTube videos of gurus and digital marketers. Like, what if you I'll just take a business example. Oftentimes when I'm helping someone reclaim their business so it actually funds and fits the life they want, when we look at all the things that they're doing, they're 90% of it, 80% of it they could just stop doing it, and it would have no appreciable different impact on how close or fast they're getting to their target. Which means that simply by stop doing the things that you don't need to do, you are going to recapture an incredible amount of time, bandwidth, attention, energy, effort, and money. And that means that you already got closer to the life that you want. You could take that, save time and money and effort, and do the things that you want to do in life. And if you want to carve off a little bit to do the 2 or 3 things necessary to actually close the gap, you could do that. Because if you look at what is actually required to have a successful business, none of it has anything to do with guru frameworks or digital marketing BS. Because I ran a brick and mortar music store before there was digital marketing. I didn't need a funnel. I didn't need an ideal customer avatar. I didn't need advertising. I needed to set up shop in a place where there were people that wanted the kind of things that I could provide. And I needed to have enough conversations and delight enough people to spread the word for me that this resource was available in town and they should check it out. And so what do you need for a successful business? You need an offer that is irresistible enough for an audience that is eager enough to achieve that aspiration or solve that problem through your offer. And you need a way of putting that offer in front of that audience. Now, just to bring back in, the whole idea of funnels, like, you can do that with a funnel. I know that you can make that work because I've made it work. And if I can make it work, anybody can make it work. But it's not the only way to do it. And if you are not the kind of person that likes to spend a lot of time refreshing your Facebook ads dashboard or generating content for social media platforms that won't show your content to 98% of the people that have signed up to be your friend or follower. That's you can overcome that with ads. You can make that machine work if that's what you want to do. But if you don't, conversations again are the fastest path to connect your offer with the audience that is eager for the solution that you have. That's a gap that you can close in very short order. The only other thing I'll say about all that, Ryan, and I'd be interested to hear what your experience is with this, is once you actually define the gap, that's when you can get really creative in how you're going to remain humble and hiding and remain stuck and not pursuing the things that you just revealed are totally within your ability to accomplish. Because once you've actually named the problem and you have named it in a way that's solvable, now you're on the hook.
Yep.
And now your identity and your worthiness is tied to whether or not you actually accomplish the thing that you just articulated as a thing that you can accomplish. And
Another
so that,
gap. You've just created another gap.
there's gaps within gaps for
Yep.
sure. So it's, this is why people like you and I get to stay in business, is because, we can talk about this. And, I think there's probably people on this call that are like, holy cow, like, I just got this insight that now I can actually apply to my business, and I'll save some time and I'll save some money and some effort, and I'll make the gap a solvable problem. And then, but who's gonna help you hold yourself to account? Who's going to help you stay the course? Who's going to help you see the things that you don't see and peek around the corners at the missed opportunities and the missed leverage, and provide the reminders? That's, I don't think anybody that pays you or I is paying us for our information or insight. There's lots of people that have insight and inspiration. I'm looking at the feed right now and I see Alice and Edgar and Maya and Mariana and Nick and Duncan. These are all people that I follow on Substack, and they all have plenty of insight and inspiration. So there's no shortage of insight and inspiration, but the way that the people that I can help are going to be different than the people that Ryan can help, and they're different than the people that Maya or Mariana or Nick or Alice can help. And so people will pay you to help them implement whatever insights and inspiration you provided them with to close that gap with greater ease and velocity. That's the offer.
Yes. Yeah, right. It's not a knowledge problem, right? You said it. I mean, especially in today's world. I mean, Google's been around long enough to know that you can get pretty much anything, any information you need relatively quickly. You throw in Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, the host of AI tools. Knowledge is not the problem. It's the gap between knowing and doing.
Well, Nick Peterson has a great Dr. Nick can, if he's still on here, can drop the name in. It's Todd Snyder, I think, is a child psychologist who says intelligence is your ability to get what you want. That's and I know that I've heard something similar to that from Nietzsche or someone like that. But if intelligence is the ability to get what you want, then this next step that Nick takes is learning is the ability to change your behavior when in a similar situation. So if you wake up today and do everything that you did yesterday, you'll get the same results that you've been getting.
Absolutely.
And you should not be surprised when you're not making any progress. If you want things to be differently, you're going to have to see, be, and do things differently. And so if you're going to improve your intelligence, you're going to have to apply learning, changing your behavior to close all of those gaps. And you are I think you're 100% right. Like, nobody is paying anybody for information, because ChatGPT or Claude can scrape the internet and they can share your bespoke framework, blueprint, template, whatever it is, that's freely available, whether you put it behind a paywall or not.
Yeah.
What AI can't replicate is what is it like to sit in a room with Ryan and be seen, heard, and understood by someone like Ryan, who and um, be forced to remain uncomfortable and on the hook, and to sit in the tension of all the blind spots
Yes.
and missed opportunities that Ryan just revealed,
Yep.
and have Ryan's assistance in becoming the kind of person that can become the kind of person that accomplishes what you want to accomplish. AI
Yeah,
is never going to
absolutely.
replicate that. So that's
No.
ultimately what people are paying you or me for. They're not paying us for our information. So why not give the information away for free?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I call it challenging your BS. Your belief systems, your blind spots, and the bullshit stories that you tell yourself. And what I found consistently is that the belief has been a bullshit story that lived in my blind spot. And the unraveling of all of that stuff is where you find the opportunities. That's how you close the gap, right? Is putting that into practice, like to
Have you
to your
read
point.
Kevin Ashton's book, How to Fly a Horse?
I have not.
It's a great book about mostly about creativity and innovation, but he has this great quote. Um, Trust is belief in yourself. Certainty is belief in your beliefs. And the extrapolation is, certainty is a barrier and trust is a bridge. But to your point, like, we all believe what we believe, mostly just because we believe it, because there is no absolute, like, what
Right.
are the absolute truths in life? Death and taxes?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I see a lot of people bragging about how they don't pay taxes, and I see lots of people trying to figure out how they can live forever. And
Yep.
who knows? They may crack
Right.
that. And who knows if even when we release this mortal coil that there isn't something ongoing and better than what we're experiencing now. So, in a world where there is no certainty, no absolute certainty, a big part of this, again, to quote you, the gap within the gap is, how do we sit in the tension of all the uncertainty and yet still make decisions better and act on those decisions so that we can get closer to what we want in life without blowing ourselves up or burning ourselves out in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. It's well said. To me, it all goes back to this. There's a quote that I absolutely love by Carl Jung. I'm sure you've heard it, but until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate.
Yeah.
And so much I think of what we're talking about. I think this ties back to this idea of your grandkids. And I certainly have seen this, with what I've learned is you see them in a very natural state, right? Very curious and kind and loving most of the time. I mean, they can be violent little creatures at times when they don't get their way, but this longing for belonging forces us to adapt and change and become what we must become to stay connected to those who are caring for us. And all this is happening before language is online, right? So this is feelings and sensations, and the language of the body, not the language of the brain. And by the time language comes on, a lot of those beliefs, about ourselves, about others, about the world we live in, they're already established. They're just not established in language. And then we begin to build a language around that. And the bullshit stories, that's where that comes in, right? We begin to tell a narrative. And at least for me, that is sort of how I lost my way in life. Going off the edge and being a rebellious kid, and then also locking into this idea that my path to acceptance was through achievement.
Mm,
And so, when I got my corporate job, it was a summer job that turned into a career that I was hell bent on getting to the top, not realizing that it was all this. The whole drive was this need to be accepted.
yeah.
And to your point earlier about the window, everything that I was trying to fill this hole of not being enough. of fearing that I wouldn't be accepted unless I proved that I was worthy of it. Um, you fast forward to today, and I can look back very clearly and go, well, the only acceptance I needed was mine.
Yeah.
But I was trying to fill it with, titles and promotions and houses and cars and stuff. And man, you get sucked into this trap, right? I call it C4 because it really does blow up your life. The compare, consume, compete, conform. Um, that's sort of the indoctrination of society that we get sucked into, from a very early stage. And so I've spent the most of my last 10 or 15 years trying to undo that constructed self, you know?
Yeah, I call it the identity trap.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
we again, just watching my 9-month-old and 4-year-old grandson be who they are, because they don't have they're not yet fully capable to buy into any of the games that we are forced to play through institutionalized education and occupation. Um, but then, when you reflect back on your own journey, like you were just sharing, like we realized that we ended up playing a game that we never signed up for, chasing a finish line that we never picked for ourselves. And then we wonder why we are so profoundly unhappy and dissatisfied, even when we get all the tokens of,
yeah,
associated with success by somebody else's definition,
yep,
that come to us through the scrutiny and expectations of other people. And I think, one of the biggest, most important things about your work and what I try to do as well is helping people wake up and see, like, are you playing a game that you never signed up for? You can't win a game you don't want to play. Is this, do like, it's one thing to, um, it's one thing to unconsciously keep doing what you're doing, but when you've woken up and seen it for what it is, to continue to just invest in that sunk cost of an identity that you never fit and never made you happy. Um, that's a tragic thing.
yeah,
It's also filled with trauma, and so it's it's uh, it's an interesting tightrope to walk, to help
mm,
people, to help reveal blind spots,
yeah,
and to help people see around corners, and in a way I call it empathetic antagonism. To help people get underneath someone's skin just enough to help them see that there
yeah,
are other doors and light switches in the room, and to engage in them in a way that helps them empower themselves to turn the light switches on and open the doorways and cross the threshold.
yeah. Well, and I think so many people, myself included, you live in this gap, but you don't realize you're living inside that gap, you know? But it manifests itself in a number of ways, but I call it the ache. This for me, it was this low level ache of feeling like I'd lost purpose and meaning, even though I had a career I was chasing and a goal I was going after. I could articulate my career goals, my drive, my ambition, where I wanted to end. I had salary, stock options, bonuses, all that stuff mapped out on spreadsheets. Like I could tell you where I was going to be 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, all of that. But yet I still felt like something was missing. I guess it was the best way to explain it. And and then you start to feel guilty about that. Well, I've got a good job, I've got a good marriage, I've got healthy kids, I'm living in a nice home, I'm doing the things I want to do, got all the stuff. There's so many people who are less fortunate than me. Why do I feel the way
Hmm.
that I feel when I'm checking all the boxes I've been told I was supposed to check, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it takes a lot of, for me, I'm hard headed. So sometimes it takes a 2 by 4 right side to the side of my head to get me to wake up and pay attention. But it took several of those 2 by 4 moments, to soften me up and get through that arrogance and ignorance, of all of it. So How do you see that for most of the people that you work with in terms of how it manifests in their life?
Well, I think, just to circle back to uh, ancient wisdom and the insight that it has for us, one of the messages from the Bhagavad Gita, and it's not articulated this way. This is my articulation of one of the primary messages of the Bhagavad Gita, is that your life is speaking to you because it wants to speak through you. Our life is constantly speaking to us. One of the reasons that we oftentimes end up so close to what life is calling us to do is because even when we're not listening, it just has a way of getting us on that path. The problem is, my friend Stephen Cope wrote a great book called The Great Work of Our Life, which explores the Bhagavad Gita and the call to vocation. He talks about how you can be off of your life path by just 1 or 2 degrees, and it'll feel like a mile.
Mm,
And you know, a lot of the work that I do is to help people cultivate enough presence and stillness to like actually hear what life is calling them to do, to see how they are complicit in their own suffering, and then um, you know and then to also look in the mirror and recognize that while they are the cause of most of their suffering, they also possess everything they need to
mm,
alleviate that suffering. Because you know Stoicism tells us that, talks about the dichotomy of control. Epictetus opens up his handbook with the revelation that um, some things are up to us and others are not, and then he lists everything that's not within our control, which is basically everything. Like our bodies are not within our control. Like you don't, if you were in control of your body, you wouldn't age. You wouldn't have joint pain. You wouldn't
mm,
catch colds, and you wouldn't get COVID because if you
right.
controlled your body, you would not want any of that. We don't control the weather. We don't control the geopolitical situation. We don't control the weather. Like everything's beyond our control, except the two things that are necessary to live a life of equanimity and purpose, which is you control how you see yourself and your situation and other people, and you control what you decide and do next. Again, if you are an able bodied person in possession of all of your mental faculties. So, if that is all that's required, then it comes down to what we were discussing earlier, which is what are the stories that you're telling yourself? Like if you tell yourself a story that you're not capable or worthy or any of those things, then that's the story you will live.
Yeah,
But it's very easy, it's very simple to just flip the script,
yeah,
uh, and the by revealing the gap, you reveal that the gap is a solvable problem, that you possess everything you need to close it. Now, what are you going to do? Are
right.
you going to invent more stories so that you can stay stuck and humble and hiding, and or are you going to step into possibility and your potential to get everything you want in life and make the difference that you want to make? So, I think the first step is always awareness. Like you don't know you have a problem until the problem is revealed. You don't know that you're unhappy until your happiness is revealed. And I can't tell you that and have you understand it. I can only help you experience for yourself
Mm,
that you are not living the life that of fulfillment and meaning that you want to be living, that you are not living into your potential, even if you're winning the game of life by all the markers of society. Once you have achieved that awareness, self-awareness, then it's about cultivating self-efficacy. Can you become the kind of person that can stop doing all the stupid shit that you're doing and start doing the 2 or 3 things that are necessary to be done better to get you clearer about and closer to what you really want? And then it becomes an effort in self-actualization, like helping you close that gap between the person you are and the person you want to be and the things that you have and the things that you want to have. But ultimately, just like Maslow's hierarchy eventually understood, like at some point you transcend self altogether. Self transcendence is when you realize that it's really has nothing to do with you. That the true meaning and fulfillment of your life it comes through service and kindness and fairness to other people. The Stoic virtue of justice doesn't mean give everybody what they deserve, or it's not a legalistic thing. It's justice is treating people with fairness and with kindness, the kindness and fairness that they deserve, because they are also human beings, fellow human beings, just like you. Are they perfect? No. Are we all confused and conflicted? Yes. And that doesn't mean that we are not worthy and that we are not entitled to be the stewards of our experience and the shepherds of our destiny.
Yeah, I mean that you reminded me of a quote that I heard when I first found Eckhart Tolle, where
Yeah.
he says, "We suffer the consequences of our unconsciousness," and that really pissed me off the first time I heard it, because it didn't make sense to me, and really felt like it was, shifting this blame to me. But man, I'll tell you, the depth of that statement is so real, because because of our unconsciousness, we just continue to recreate, our yesterdays into our todays and into our tomorrows.
Yeah, I really love his stuff. I've read his uh, what is it, The Power of Now and A New Earth are two that I've read many
Yep.
times, and I love watching his YouTube videos just because his presence is just palpable. Like you can really feel um, his energy and
Yeah.
the depth of his
Yeah, and he
knowledge.
doesn't use notes. That's crazy
Yeah.
part. I mean, everything he does is sort of ad
Well,
hoc,
you and
which
I
is
aren't
amazing
using
to
notes,
me.
Ryan. Come on. I mean,
That's true. That's true. I'm not giving
we're
myself enough
aspiring.
credit.
Well, tell me a
Yeah.
little bit more about um, tell me a little bit more about what you're working on, and like where does all this show up for you in your work? I mean, I definitely understand the audience that you're serving, and the gap that you're helping them identify and close. But how do all these things show up in the work that you're doing and what you're building on Substack?
Well, yeah, I think the whole premise here for me is to wake up to the life that you have, to notice that you've drifted, right, away from yourself. And chasing Maximus, it Maximus was a nickname, and I've got this strange connection to nicknames. I've got several throughout my life that seem to define me. This one was more of a joke by the guys I worked with at corporate. But Maximus is the greatest, right? So chasing the greatest version of yourself, which already exists. So I use it as this frame of, for me, it's been very helpful to, I like to journal. And so my best journal entries are when I'm arguing with myself, and then at some point Maximus enters a conversation. So this future version of me who already has it figured out, then tells me exactly what I need to do. And the first time that happened, the first time that I actually caught that, I was like, holy shit, I already knew what to do. Um, that answer didn't come from someone else. It came from me. It
Mm,
took me getting just far enough outside of my current frame of reference to see it from a different perspective. Um, and so that I became very intentional about that. But what I've realized through the process of that is that finding my way is trying to become this version of myself that I want to become, closing that gap between where I am and where I want to be. But at the same time, it's reconnecting with this version of me who's always been there, has just been buried underneath all the BS,
mm,
right? Um, and so, yeah, I'm very passionate about what you described, right? In terms of being able to sit with people and have the hard conversations, to say the thing that needs to be said, even though it's tough to say, right? There's a big difference between being nice and being kind. And I heard the acronym NICE means nothing inside cares enough. And I latched onto that, right? Because there are a lot of people who are just nice for the sake of being nice, but they're just protecting themselves. And I prefer a 2x4, like I've mentioned. And so I like to dole those out sometimes in a kind, caring, loving way. But I believe that people need to hear what we can see that they can't see only because they're too close to it. And so getting people to expand their perspective, right, changes their perception of things.
Mhm.
And really just trying to get people to challenge their BS, right? To a wake up to the life that they have, to unravel this constructed self, right? The identity trap that you talk about, that you've constructed this version of yourself that you think you need to be, that and who you've needed to be to survive, right? Has gotten you here. But
Right.
but a lot of those things have just become habituated, and they're automatic, and they no longer serve where you're trying to go. And so identifying those things so that you can rewire your brain, right? I like to say, remind yourself that you are reminding yourself. So this process of reminding yourself is the repetitive part of learning new behaviors and habits, and that's a very hard and difficult thing. At least it has been for me.
Mhm.
Um, I've got this. My story, man, is just this story of not enoughness, and it started early, probably way earlier than I'm giving it credit for. But I grew up in a very chaotic environment. Um, I was pretty emotional, and so I got the nickname Crying Ryan because I cried a lot. Well, as a kid and as a boy, that's shameful and humiliating. And so I've found ways to not cry, at least not in front of other people. And then eventually got to the point where I just disconnected with most of my feelings and emotions and charged forward and tried to be tough. I was anxious and angry most of my life. Not I think I was a good person, just anxious and angry. So I could get pretty ticked off if you tried to pass me on a roundabout or cut me off, pull out in front of me, things of that nature. It really reared its head in those scenarios. Um, but I'm getting a little off track here. I apologize for that. But one of the things that I think I'm really starting to see through the message that you're teaching is I've been really struggling with this whole idea of an avatar, um, of limiting my message down to a person, which
Right.
the only person I could figure out to put in that box is me 10 or 15 years ago. This high functioning, self rejecting person who on the outside has got it all together and looks like they're winning, but secretly struggling and no one to talk to about it and confused by the whole thing. Um, and so really just helping people identify that and closing the gap between what they know and what they do, between who they are and who they want to be. And this, the hardest habit to overcome is the habit of being you.
Yeah.
And it's my number one struggle. I left my corporate job going on 10 years now. And then we started our own businesses. And then I recreated the whole mess of chasing after all the external stuff in our businesses. Um, and then I decided that I wanted to be a coach again because I love it so much. And I've been spinning my wheels for the last 3 years instead of, getting out and doing the work. And I finally, within the last 12 months, have done that. So, I'm in the middle of still trying to close my gaps. And some of them are much wider than I would care to admit out loud.
Yeah.
Um, and so, how do I do this? A, for me, but at the same time to help others and to show others that, I mean, the work is never done. I mean, you talk about do the work. It's time to do the work, do the work, do the work. Well, the work is never going to be done. And the more we learn, the more we grow. I think the more we find out about ourselves that there's yet more work to do.
Yeah.
And so really just
Yeah.
walking along people to help that journey.
Well, I love the point. Well, several things that you said that we could spend another hour talking about. But I, one of the things about becoming that you alluded to that I think is often neglected, like I hear people talking about reinvention, and in my experience, that's not true or necessarily healthy. Like people are like who you are becoming lies mostly in being more of what you've always been. Like the more I spend time with my grandsons, the more I realize that I am actually becoming more and more like the young kid that I was, more kind, more curious, more creative, uh, more willing to take risks because I don't see them as risks. I just see them as little adventures that are worth exploring. Um, I have this idea of conspiring with your future self. Like, if you want to become a different person, yes, you're going to have to become, see, be, and do things differently. So why not get with that person that you want to become and figure out the roadmap together? But oftentimes it does come down to being more of what you've always been. Like as a kid, you weren't chasing, before you went to school, you never thought about chasing grades or sitting up straight and doing what you're told or being a good kid because you're able to stand quietly in line and wait your turn. um, we as kids we see things that we want to accomplish and we simply figure out how to do it until we figure out how to do it. And I think that's a lot of, and it's not so much, I don't even think you have to be helping the people that are like you were 10 or 15 years ago. When I first started teaching guitar, I had students that wanted to learn how to read music, and I didn't know how to read music, so I got a book, a method book that taught how to read the notes on the strings of a guitar, and I stayed 2 weeks ahead of my first batch of students, and I taught myself how to read as
Perfect.
I was teaching them how to read. And because my real skill wasn't knowing what the notes were, my real skill was being a teacher who could help people figure out, like, why do I want to play the guitar? Why do I want to learn this melody? Like, and then close that gap as quickly as possible. So, when I think about all the different things that I've done, it's all been one thing. It's always been about helping people get clear about what they're trying to accomplish and find the fastest path to getting there. It's just been in a bunch of different domains over the years. Um, anyway, we've managed to ramble for a full hour, and I need to go relieve Grandma, who is juggling both grandsons at the moment.
Yeah.
But
Super
uh,
important you get that done.
yeah. Well, and as I told you before we got on, it's almost snap time, so
Perfect. Perfect. Good for you, man.
you
Well,
have to keep
I've
the
I
main thing.
thoroughly enjoyed this, man. We should do it again because I do think we could go another hour or two.
Oh,
Um,
easily. Well, it's a privilege to meet you and to spend this time with you and to talk to you. I really love the difference that you're making and the work that you're doing. I love the way that you talk about the things that you're talking about, as I see them on notes and so forth. So I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the invitation. Thanks for reaching out and making this time today.
Likewise, man. Very much so. I'm gonna continue to follow along, man. I'm learning a lot from you. So thank you for
Uh,
that.
speaking of, here's the grandson now. You want to say hi real quick? Come here, big boy.
Papa.
That's not your papa. That's Ryan. Say hi, Ryan.
Hi there.
Is it
How
time
are
for Papa
you?
to get off the Zoom? Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that's your cue. Have a good day, man. I
All
enjoyed
right.
it.
Take care. Bye bye.